Oh, yeah, I've been off my game. I just gotta get it back together. Yesterday when I got on, yeah, everything, my audio was just, and it was that thing where OBS had gone to default on a reinstall. I've been through that so many times. I should know it. It's not going to, when you do a fresh install and all your audio settings go to that default or whatever, a lot of times it's nothing until you actually go to the drop down and take it off default and put it on exactly what you want it to be on. So such is life. I would like to get on and do more layouts. But as it stands, I've been messing with my computer here ever since. Well, yeah, 7:30. Got up late. But it looks like my audio is going through, and it looks like my voice is hitting the level it's supposed to be hitting. Oh, but now my dang thing, I forgot that a justification would justify all my other layouts. I'm going for a different kind of text look. And I need to be getting more reading done. So today I'm going to try to stick on the book.
Was announced the intention to send out the TAF Commission, which message also announced, in effect, that it was M.R. McKinley's purpose to begin the work of reconstruction as fast as the patient and unconsenting millions loyal to our rule should be rescued from the clutch of the hated takeoff. Recurring again to the reconcentration law itself, the moral quality of executive action putting it in operation was not unlike that which would attach should the governor of Massachusetts, in lieu of ordering the state troops to the scene of great strike riots in half a dozen towns around Boston, issue proclamations something like this. The situation has grown so serious that your local police force, as you see, is wholly inadequate to cope with the situation. You will all, therefore, thrust your toothbrushes, nightgowns, and a change of clothing into the family gift and assemble on the Boston Common and in the public gardens, there to remain until the necessity for this order ceases to exist, and we will there take the best care of you we can, as was done in the case of the San Francisco fire. As governor, I am unwilling to order out the military. If any lawyer on the commission gave any thought at the time to the validity of the reconcentration law in its relation to the due process of law clause of the Philippine Government Act, which none of them probably did, he must simply have justified me by the benevolence of the end on the idea that he knew so much better than Congress possibly could the needs of the local situation. But if you read this law in the light of a knowledge of its practical operation, there is more suggestion between its lines of Senator Bacon's friends. Corpse carcass stench and clouds of vampire bats softly swirling out on their orgies over the dead than there is of benevolence. It really was unsportsmanlike for the commission to have entrusted reconcentration to the native police and constabulary the native governors had, and it was wholly indefensible for them to take the liberty of violating an act of Congress in order to live up to their pet fiction about the war being entirely over. After the term of court at Surigay in the month of May, 1903, I was sent to Misamis province, where I remained until September, handling an insurrection down there. This province also was nominally in a state of peace. I There was no formal recognition of the existence of the insurrection by suspension of the writ of habeas corpus. Curiously enough, as I wrote Governor Taft afterwards, the Msemis crowd of disturbers of the peace were genuine insurrectos. The movement was not so formidable as the Ola insurrection in Albay I dealt with later, but they were by no means unmitigated cutthroats. I have often wondered how they managed to be so respectable at that late date. They did not steal, as did most of the outlaws of 1903. Their avowed purpose was to subvert the existing government. The use of this word, insurrection, in connection with these various disturbances recalls a pertinent incident. In 1904 there was a vacancy on the Supreme Bench of the islands. Some of my friends, members of the bar of my district, got up a petition to the then Governor General setting forth in most harsh terms my alleged qualifications for the place. Now in the Philippines, in the candor of informal social intercourse, all of us always called a spade, i.e. we called an insurrection instead of referring to the disturbance in the guarded and euphemistic terms which you find in all the official reports intended for home consumption. So in their petition, these gentlemen recited, among my other supposed qualifications, that I had held court in 3 different provinces during insurrections in the same. The Albay insurrection was the worst one I had to deal with during Governor Taft's administration as governor of the Philippines. This was the insurrection he had also known of. The first thing this man Ola and the official reports of the Philippine government in connection with the Albay disturbances of 1902-3 is in the report of the colonel commanding the constabulary for the district, which included Albay, Col. H. Van Holtz, dated June 30, 1903, 417. This report contains a sort of diary of events for the year preceding the date of it. An entry for October 28, 1902, begins. Early this month negotiations were opened with Simeon Ola, chief of the ladrones in this province, with a view of convincing him to surrender. Think of this great government negotiating with the leader of a band of thieves who were openly and flagrantly defying its authority. And it proceeds. After many conferences extending over a period of 40 days, during which hostilities were suspended, Ola broke off negotiations and withdrew his entire force and a large number of additional recruits that he had prepared during the armistice. Before Ola finally surrendered, he is supposed to have had a total command ranging at various times from 1,000 to 1,500 men, and I think Colonel Van Holtz must have had in the field opposed to him. First and last, at least an equal number of native forces. Ola also makes an official reappearance in the report of the governor of Albay province for 1904, 418. There appears that reconcentration was begun in Albay as part of the campaign against Ola and his forces in March 1903 and continued until the end of October of that year, says this report of the governor of Albay concerning reconcentration. Naturally, the effect of this is unusual on the prisons in the immediate area was disease and suffering for want of food, ordinary living accommodations. The governor does not say how large the unusual volume of prisons was that was voted into the reconcentration zones, nor does he furnish any mortality statistics. Nobody kept any. How much there was of the awful mortality and clouds of vampire bats softly swirling out on their orgies over the dead, that some of Bacon's army friends corresponding with President Kennedy not affirmed the number of people affected by reconcentration in Albay and an adjacent province that caught the contagion of unrest that had to be given similar treatment was about 300,000, 419. In his report for 1903, in describing the Ola insurrection of 1902-3, Governor Taft says, a reign of terror was inaugurated throughout the province. He then goes on to state that to meet it he applied the reconcentration tactics. In the same report he describes what is to my mind the most humiliating incident connected with the whole history of the American government in the Philippines, viz., Vice Governor Wright's visit to Albay in 1903, apparently in pursuance of the peace at any price policy that the Manila government was bent on. Governor Taft says of the civil government's dealings with His Excellency, the Honorable Simeon Ola, the chief of the brigands, that General Raiden tribe, Pardo de Tavera, a Filipino member of the commission, went down to Albay and talked to the people, the idea, apparently being that those poor unarmed or ill-armed creatures should go after the brigands. This was to avoid ordering out the military, and summarily putting a stop to the reign of terror as became the dignity of this nation. I think these talks had something to do with the origin of the charge afterwards. Made that immunity was promised, Ola and the men who finally did surrender with him. Of course General Wright made no such promises, but the idea got out in the province, that the word was, get the guns, the inference being that if Ola and his people would come in and surrender their guns they would be lightly dealt with. In his book Our Philippine Problem, Professor Willis, at page 140, gives what purports to be an agreement signed by Colonel Bandholz, dated September 22, 1903, whereby Bandholz promises only immunity, and also promises a number of other things, which are on their face frankly preposterous. Ola was much on the witness stand before me during that term of court, and everything came out in the wash. He was represented by competent, intelligent, and fearless Filipino counsel, and they did not suggest the existence of any such document. No proof of any offer of immunity was adduced before me. I think Ola simply finally decided to throw himself on the mercy of the government, on the idea that there would be more joy over the one sinner that repented than over the 99 that are already saved. He was probably as much afraid that Governor Taft would order out the military as the wretched Pacificos were that he would not. He immediately turned state's evidence against all the men under him of whose individual actings and doings he had any knowledge, the prosecuting attorney making, with my full approval, a promise to ask executive clemency as a reward. This was in keeping with the practice in like cases customary in all jurisdictions throughout the English-speaking world. The magnitude of the Ola insurrection may be somewhat appreciated from the financial loss it occasioned, says Governor Taft in his report for 1903. The governor of Albay estimates that hunt production and sale have been interfered with to the extent of some 10 to 12 millions of dollars Mexican, which is equivalent to $5 or $6 million American money, 420. As the population of the province was about 250,000, 421, a loss of $5 million meant a loss of $20 per capita for the 6 months or so every concentration during which the farms were neglected. This would be equivalent to a loss of $1,800,000,000 in the same length of time to a country having a population of 90 million, which is the total population figure for the United States according to the census of 1910. It was in the latter part of October, 1903, I believe, that Ola finally surrendered with some 500 or 600 men. I was sent to Albay about the middle of November to assist the regular judge of the district, Hun Adam C. Cartson, now one of the justices of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, in disposing of the case arising out of the Ola performances. Conditions at the time were also very much perturbed in various neighboring and other provinces, and the courts and constabulary were kept very busy. An incident recurs to memory just here which illustrates the state of public order, but before relating it, a decent respect to the opinions of the reader requires me to state my own attitude toward that whole situation at the time. I am perfectly clear in my own mind that as society stands at present, capital punishment is a necessary part of any sensible scheme for its protection. I have no compunction about hanging any man for the lawless taking of the life of another. We owe it to the community as a measure of protection to your life and mine, and all others, so far as public order was concerned in the country now under consideration in 1903. The civil government was simply a well-meaning sham, a military government with a civil name to it, when the constabulary would get in the various brigands, cutthroats, etc., who might be terrorizing a given district, some of them masquerading as patriots, others not even doing that. The courts would try them. None of the judges cared anything about any particular brigand in any given case except to find out how many, if any, murders, rapes, arsons, etc. he had committed during the particular reign of terror, of which he had been a part. Wherever specific murders were proven, the punishment would always be a life for a life, and you have no idea how absolutely wanton some of the murders were, and how cruelly some of the young women, daughters of the farmers, were maltreated after they were carried off to the mountains. I would hate to try to guess how much more of this sort of thing would have had to occur in Albay in 1903 than did occur to have moved Governor Taft to deprive Albay of the protection of a benign civil government, one of the pet expressions of contemporaneous official literature, and say the word to the army to take hold of the situation and give the people decent protection. But to come to the influence it approached shortly after I reached Albay and set to work to hold part 2 of the district court, while my colleague, Judge Carson, out part I. We had a call from a third judge, Judge Linebaugher, of Chicago, who was on his way to some other perturbed region. I think that by that time, late in November 1903, Governor Taft must have known he was soon to leave the islands to become Secretary of War, and therefore was anxious to be able to make the best showing possible in his farewell report as governor. As to the tranquility condition, at any rate, Judge Linebaugher came to see us for a few hours, his ship having touched en route at the port near the provincial capital of Albay. Judge Carson had had a gallows erected near the public square of the town for the execution of some brigand he had convicted, whether it was for maltreating some poor farmer's daughter until she died, or burying an American alive, or what, I do not now recollect, but in going around the town one suggested, as we passed this gallows, that we go up on it to get the view. So we went, the three of us, then each looked at the other and all thought of the work ahead. Then Judge Carson smiled and dispelled the momentary somberness by repeating with grim humor an old Latin quotation he happened to remember from his college days at the University of Virginia. He called him Memenius. Added, "It will be pleasant to remember these things hereafter." The old insurrection had continued from October 1902 to October 1903, without suspension of civil government. During that period, the jail had been filled far beyond its reasonable capacity most of the time. It sometimes had contained many hundreds. As to the sanitary conditions, in passing the jail building one day in company with one of the provincial officials, he remarked to me, nonchalantly, "is equivalent to a death sentence to put a man in that jail." I afterwards found out that this was no joke. During most of my visit to the province I was too busy holding court and separating the sheep from the goats to think much of anything else. But toward the close of the term, after Christmas, after Governor Taft had left the islands and gone home to be Secretary of War, an incident happened that produced a profound impression on me, suggested a new viewpoint, and started troubled doubts as to whether the whole benevolent assimilation business was not a mistake born of a union of avarice and piety in which avarice predominated. Doubts which certain events of the following year, hereinafter related, converted in conviction that any decent kind of government of Filipinos by Filipinos would be better for all concerned than any government we could give them, hampered as we always will be by the ever-present necessity to argue that government against the consent of the governed is not altogether wrong, and that taxation without representation may be a blessing in disguise. The Yuletide incident above alluded to was this: most of the dockets having been disposed of, and there being a lull between Christmas and New Year's Day which afforded time for matters more or less perfunctory in their nature, the prosecuting attorney brought in rough drafts of two proposed orders for the court to sign. One was headed with a list of 57 names, the other with a list of 63 names. Both orders recited that the foregoing persons had died in the jail, all but one between May 20th and Dec. 3, 1903, roughly 6½ months, as will appear from the examination of the dates of death, and concluded by directing that the indictments be quashed. The writer was only holding an extraordinary term of court there in Albay, and was about to leave the province to take charge of another district to which Governor Taft had assigned him before leaving the islands. The newly appointed regular judge of the district, Judge Trent, now of the Philippine Supreme Court, was scheduled soon to arrive. Therefore the writer, with no sign of those orders, but kept in a group of trees, a correct translation of one of them appears below. followed by the list of names which headed the other identity order. The United States of America, Philippine Islands, 8. Judicial District. Indicated this instance of Albay. The United States again. Cornelio Rigurosa died December 3, 1903. Fabian Bass died September 25, 1903. Julian Messiaen died October 14, 1903. Francisco Rigurosa died October 18, 1903. Anacleto Solano died November 25, 1903. Valentin C. Solano died November 6, 1903. Felix Basutona died September 26, 1903. Marcello Patingo died November 15, 1903. Julian Renanti died September 7, 1903. Dialexio Teresias died October 4, 1903. Nickel died November 23, 1903. Balbino Nickel died September 23, 1903. Damiano Nickel died November 23, 1903. Leoncius Albaburo died November 20, 1903. Bartolomeo Sardino died July 25, 1903. Marcello Ariola died October 26, 1903. Francisco Cao died November 26, 1903. Martin Olaguer died November 13, 1903. Juan Eric died November 16, 1903. Euphemio Beer died November 21, 1903. Julian Sotero died October 30, 1902. Juan Patton died September 10, 1903. Benedicto Mella died July 30, 1903. Placido Porlich died June 13, 1903. Gaudencio Guida died October 11, 1903. Alberto Cabrera died September 8, 1903. Julian Patton died August 4, 1903. UCB Patton died August 10, 1903. Leonardo Rabusi died November 2, 1903. Julian Rio Valdez died October 2, 1903. Victor Rio Valdez died October 23, 1903. Mauricio Balvin died September 27, 1903. Tomas Brigado died July 23, 1903. Miguel de los Santos died July 28, 1903. Eustaquio Mabula died November 18, 1903. Eugenia Mamibai died November 1, 1903. Francisco Luna died August 7, 1903. Gregorio Cyr died October 31, 1903. Teodoro Patingo died November 21, 1903. Teodorico Tua died September 23, 1903. Seferino Oxia died November 10, 1903. Graciona Pamplona died September 12, 1903. Felipe Bonifacio died November 26, 1903. Baltazar Bundy died October 12, 1903. Julian Mocat died October 13, 1903. Francisco de Punta died August 20, 1903. Pedro Madrid died August 24, 1903. Felipe Sequit died July 17, 1903. Rufo Mansalan died July 14, 1903. Ignacio Titano died June 20, 1903. Alfonso Locat died June 29, 1903. Gil Locat died May 23, 1903. Regino Batara died September 7, 1903. Bonifacio Bo died August 2, 1903. Francisco de Belen died September 29, 1903. Decree. The defendants above named, charged with divers crimes, having died in the provincial jail by reason of various ailments, upon various dates, according to official report of the jailer, it is ordered by this court that the cases pending against the said deceased persons be, and the same are hereby, quashed, the causes to be charged against the government. Judge of the 12th District acting in the 8th. Albay, December 28, 1903. The foregoing order contains 57 names. As already indicated, the second order was like the first. It contains the names of 63 other deceased prisoners, as follows, to wit. Antonio Villa died September 2, 1903. Gregorio Sicato died July 21, 1903. Benito Almonte died October 11, 1903. Faustino Salo died October 9, 1903, Leocadia Pena died October 16, 1903, Juan Ranuco died October 16, 1903, Esteban de Lima died February 4, 1903, Estanislao Jacobo died October 7, 1903, Nicorio Ordiales died October 19, 1903, Maria Ordiales died October 27, 1903, Raimundo Nardo died October 4, 1903, Antonia Polvarado died September 12, 1903, Nerverdo Mangor died June 14, 1903, Bardo Enrico died November 8, 1903, Simon Ordiales died September 13, 1903, Candido Rosari died September 29, 1903, Saturnino Vuovo died October 18, 1903, Vicente Belcida died May 26, 1903, Felix Canary died June 12, 1903, Pedro Kaya died July 26, 1903, Evaristo Diaz died July 24, 1903, Felix Padre died July 8, 1903, Alberto Manz died August 7, 1903, Joaquin Mohammed died September 5, 1903, Santiago Cochero died May 28, 1903, Hilario Salazar died July 26, 1903, Tomas Exnada died October 1, 1903, Julian Oco died October 4, 1903, Julian Montec died August 27, 1903, Ambrosio Rabosa died September 19, 1903, Mariano Garcia died September 12, 1903, Ramon Madrigalillo died August 19, 1903, Albino Iardo died October 1, 1903, Felipe Rotola died September 29, 1903, Urbano Serral died October 5, 1903, Gilmedia Villo died June 13, 1903, Egidio Media Villo died June 16, 1903, Mauricio Lozano died October 5, 1903, Bernard Carinin died September 27, 1903, Pedro Saluzay died September 29, 1903, Loreno Evo died August 5, 1903, Vicente Senozing died July 17, 1903, Francisco Morales died June 10, 1903, Anatola Sardulo died September 16, 1903, Lucia Rebeza died August 27, 1903, Eugenia Sambuna died August 13, 1903, Nicolas Alvaros died August 26, 1903, Eusebio Rambillo died September 13, 1903, Tomas Rimbello died August 19, 1903, Daniel Patterson died August 19, 1903, Ignacio Bundy died September 7, 1903, Juan Locat died May 23, 1903, Zacharias David Padilla died August 7, 1903, Juan Almazar died September 12, 1903, Rufino Quipi died June 13, 1903, Antonio Brio died June 13, 1903, Timodio Enciso died September 12, 1903, Hilaria Pala died August 28, 1903, Ventura Straits died May 24, 1903, Alejandro A. Navarro died May 22, 1903, Rufino Palisha died May 20, 1903, Aliu Bruqueza died July 19, 1903, Prudencio Estrada died September 15, 1903. These lists were printed in an article by the author which appeared in the North American Review for January 18, 1907, which article was reprinted by Hund, James L. Sladen, of Texas, in the Congressional Record for February 12, 1907. There can be little doubt that President Taft saw the article, and that if it had contained any inaccuracies, they would long since have been noticed. So that in the Albay jail in 1903 we had a sort of Andersonville prison, or black hole of Calcutta, on a small scale. If the military authorities had had charge of the Albay insurrection, and of the prisoners in the Albay jail in 1903, it is safe to say that the great majority of those who died would have lived, but to have ordered out the troops would have been to abandon the official fiction that there was peace. Of almost 500 or 600 men, Judge Carson and I, assisted by the chief prosecuting attorney of the government, Hun, James Ross, turned several hundred loose. Another large batch were disposed of under a vagrancy law, which allowed us to put them to work on the roads of the provinces for not exceeding 2 years, usually 6 to 12 months. Most of the remainder, a few score, we tried under the sedition law, and sent to Bilibid, the central penitentiary at Manila, for terms commensurate with their individual conduct and deeds. The more serious cases were sent up for longer terms under the brigandage law. We indulged in no more maudlin sentiment about those precious scamps who had been degrading Filipino patriotism by occasionally invoking its name in the course of a long season of preying upon their respectable fellow countrymen than Aguinaldo or Juan Cales would have indulged. I am quite sure that either Aguinaldo or Juan Cales would have made much shorter shrift of the whole bunch than Judge Carson and did. It was only the men shown to have committed crimes usually punished properly in this country that were sentenced to death, a dozen or more. All told, Ola was the star witness for the state. He held back nothing that would aid the prosecuting attorney to convict the men who had followed him for a year. He was given a sentence of 30 years by Judge Carson as a sort of expression of opinion of most Christian attitude possible concerning his real brothers that could serve as investigative evidence entitled him to immunity, and for that very good and sufficient reason Judge Carson, prosecuting attorney Ross, and myself so recommended to the governor. Ola could read and write after a fashion, though he was quite an ignorant man, but to show what his control must have been over the rank and file of his men, let one incident suffice. On the boat going up to Manila from Albi, after the term of court was over, Ola was aboard, en route for the penitentiary, but as he was a prospective recipient of executive clemency, though the courts kept an eye on him, he was allowed the freedom of the ship one night on the voyage up, the weather being extremely warm, unadvised. Stateroom sometime after midnight, carrying blanket and pillow, and went back to the store. Stowing gear at the stern of the ship to spend the rest of the night more comfortably, waiting some time afterward for some unsignable cause. I realized that the crown of another 10 was tangent to the crown of my own, and occupying part of my pillow. It was Ola, the chief of the brigands. I raised up, shook the intruder, and said, "Hello, Ola, what are you doing here?" He wakened slowly. He had no idea of any first-class passenger being back there, and had taken it for granted that I was one of the ship's crew. When he started to share my pillow, as soon as he realized who I was, he sprang to his feet with profound and effusive apologies, and paced the deck until morning. So not thinking over the possible effect of the incident on my recommendation concerning himself. After I had recovered the use of all my pillow, I went back to sleep for a spell. About dawn I was wakened by some guards chattering, but I heard Ola, who had apparently been keeping watch over my august slumbers in the meantime, say in an imperious tone to the guards, his keepers, "Hush! The judge is sleeping." They looked at the brigand chief, and cowed, obeyed. Ola was gone. 1903, continued. The Philippines Speech of Governor Taft. Just before Governor Taft left the islands in 1903, he made a speech which made him immensely popular with the Filipinos and immensely unpopular with the Americans. The keynote of this speech was the Philippines for the Filipinos. The Filipinos interpreted it to mean for them that ultimate independence was not so far in the dim distance of what is to happen after all the living are dead as to be a purely academic matter. And there was absolutely nothing in the speech to negative that idea, although he must have known how the great majority of the Filipinos would interpret the speech. On the other hand, the Americans in the islands, popularity with whom was then and there a negligible factor, interpreted the speech, not inaccurately, to mean for them, if you white men out here, not connected with the government, you Americans, British, Germans and Spaniards, and the rest of you, do not like the way I am running this country. Why, the boats have not quit running between here and your respective homes. 422. Then he came back to the United States and has ever since been urging American capital to go to the Philippines, all the time opposing any declaration by the lawmaking power of the government which will let the American who goes out there know where he is at, i.e. whether we are or are not going to keep the islands. permanently, and how to formulate his earthly plans accordingly. Though, the educated Filipinos are concurrently permitted to clamor against American exploitation, American rule, and Americans generally, and to keep alive among the masses of their people what they call the spirit of liberty, and what the insular government calls the spirit of irreconcilableness, clearly, a policy which makes for race friction and race hatred is essentially soft-headed, not soft-hearted, and automatically committed to continue. It has been and proudly boasted concerning him sometime since. One man virtually holds in his keeping the American conscience, with a regard to the Philippines, 423. This is true, and it is not as it should be. We should either stop the climate or stop the American capital and energy from going to the islands. After an American goes out to the islands, invests his money there, and casts his fortunes there, unless he is a renegade, he sticks to his own people out there, then the TAP policy steps in, and bullyrags him into what he calls knuckling to the Filipinos, every time he shows any contumacious descent from the TAP decision, reversing the verdict of all racial history, which has been up to date. That wheresoever white men dwell in any considerable numbers, in the same country with Asiatics or Africans, the white man will rule. Yet the American in the Philippines, what he is beguiled into, going there, must bow to the TAP policies. He has taken his family to the islands, and all his worldly interests are there, yet he is living under a despotism, a benevolent despotism, it is true, so long as the non-office holding American does not openly oppose the government's policies, but one which, however benevolent, is, so far as regards any broken opposition to any one outside the government hierarchy, as absolute as any of the other despotic governments of Asia, though the governor of the Philippines does not wear as much gilt braid as some of his fellow potentates on the mainland of Asia. Still, in all executive matters he wields a power quite as immediate and substantial in its operation on his subjects as any of his royal colleagues. It never for a moment occurs either to the American government official in the Philippines or to the American citizen engaged in private business there who is in entire accord with the policies of the insular government and on terms of friendship with the official, that the government under which he is living is any more of a despotism than the government of the United States. Nor should no country the American citizens engaged in private business until he begins, for one reason or another, to be at odds with the insular government and to have opinions which, American-like, he at once wants to express. If he permits himself to get thoroughly out of accord with the powers that be, the sooner he gets out of the islands the better for him. This is the most notorious single fact in the present situation. There is no public opinion to help such a person. In any case where he differs with any specific act or policy of the insular government, the American colony is comparatively small, say between 10 and 20,000 all told, outside the army, which consists of 10 or 12,000 individuals living wholly apart from the rest of the community. The doctor who is known to have the patronage of high government officials is sure of professional success, and his wife is sure to receive the social recognition her husband's position in the community naturally commands. And this permits her to make auspicious entrance into the game of playing at precedence with her next neighbor called society, so dear to the hearts of many otherwise sensible and estimable women, to say nothing of carpet knights, callow youths, cans, and aging vermins. Also, if the doctor and his lady have adult children, their opportunities to marry well are multiplied by the sunlight from the seats of the mighty. Thus the doctor and his wife are a standing lesson to the man with convictions that yearn for utterance, but who is also blessed with a discreet helpmate, more concerned in the general welfare and happiness of all the family than in seeing her husband's name in the paper. What is true of the doctor is also true of the lawyer, known to be persona grata to the government. Again, the newspaper man in favor with the government is sure to get his share of the government advertising, according to a very liberal construction, and that ensures his being able to command reportorial and editorial talent such as will sell his paper, and the consequent circulation is sure to get him the advertising patronage of the mercantile community. Thus, placing success for him on a solid, comfortable basis. Also, a contrary course will, slowly, maybe, but surely, freeze out any rash competitor. Consequently, the American in the Philippines is deprived of one of his most precious home pleasures, this letting off steam in some opposition paper about the real or imagined shortcomings of the men in charge of the government. For the reasonable expectancy of life of an opposition paper in Manila is pathetically brief. The hapless editor on the prosperous paper, whatever his talents, who happens to become afflicted with views which he airs in his editorial column, is soon upbraided by his friends at his club as getting cranky, and is told by the orthodox old-timers among them, "John, you've been out here too long. You'd better go home." If he does not change his tone, the receipts of the advertising department of his paper soon fall off, and his friend, the more tactful proprietor, who knows how to get along with people, is not long in agreeing with the rest of his friends that he has been out here too long. Again, the successful merchant has too many interests at stake in which he needs the cordial friendship of the government to be able to afford to antagonize it, and so on, through every walk of life. The influence of the government permeates every nook and corner of the situation. The average public man in the United States would not feel natural, unless intermittently bettered with steam from the exhaust valve of the soul of some outraged citizen, through the medium of the public press. But in the Philippines, a public man occupying a conspicuous position with the government may be very generally detested and actually not know it. 424. The American in the Philippines, with all his home connections severed, might as well send his family to the poorhouse at once as to come out in a paper with an interview or speech, even supposing any paper would publish it, which, copied by the papers back in the United States, would embarrass the national administration's Philippine policy in any way. The same applies to talking too freely for the newspapers when home on a visit. I think the foregoing makes sufficiently obvious the inherent impossibility of the American people ever knowing anything about current governmental mistakes in the Philippines, of which there must be some in time for their judgment to have anything to do with shaping the course of the government outfit for which they are responsible, and therefore it shows the inherent unfitness of their governmental machinery to govern the Filipinos so long as they do not change the whole form of government to meet the needs of the colonial situation, by providing a method of conducting the public judgment on a single issue, as the excessive monarchical ministries, instead of lumping issues as we now do. It is certainly assumed that the future of the Philippines are today dependent upon issues as wholly foreign to anything Philippine as is the price of cheese in Kamchatka, or the price of wool in the United States. Whether the Filipinos are successful or not, under our present form of government, we are certainly very unanticipated in our government of the Filipinos. The nature of the case eliminates our most valuable governmental asset. 2. Wait. Certain ways of public opinion, which stops public men, none of whom are infallible, before they can accomplish irreparable mischief, through uncorrected faith in plans of personalism and multitude to which their minds are made. To show how absolute was the executive and legislative power over 8 million of people entrusted by the sole authority of President McKinley to Governor Taft, without consulting Congress, though afterwards the authority so conferred was ratified by Congress and descended from Governor Taft to his successor, an incident related to the freedom of social intercourse, and not in the least, in confidence, by my late beloved friend Arthur W. Ferguson, long Executive Secretary to Governor Taft, will suffice. In 1901, the Commission had passed a law providing for the constitution of the Philippine Judiciary. 425, according to which non-American, in order to be eligible to the appointment as a judge of first instance, the ordinary trial court, or Cyprus court, of Anglo-Saxon jurisprudence, must be more than 30 years old, and not that law in the United States for a period of 5 years before appointed. In 1903, President Roosevelt wanted to make Beekman Winthrop, then under 30 years of age, now 1912, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, a judge of first instance. Governor Taft called Ferguson and said, "Judge, make me up." A commission for Beekman went up in charge of first instance. Ferguson said, "You can't do it, Governor. It's against the law." He's not old enough, Winthrop was. A graduate of the Harvard Law School, Governor Taft said humorously, "I can't wait. I'll show you. Send me a stenographer." A law was dictated, 426, striking out 30 years and inserting 25, and adding, after the words must have practiced law for a period of 5 years, the words would be a graduate of a reputable law school. Ferguson was then called in and told to go down the hall, see the other commissioners, 427, and get them together, which he did, and the law was passed in a few minutes. Then Ferguson was sent for, and the governor said, handing him the new law. Now make out that commission, even if Ferguson colored the incident up a bit, in the exercise of his inimitable artistic capacity to make anything interesting. His story was certainly substantially correct relatively to the absoluteness of the authority of the governor, as will appear by reference to the two laws cited. It is only fair to say that Winthrop made a very good judge. There used to be current in the Philippines a story that Governor Taft had said, in more or less humorous vein, "Gentlemen, I'm somewhat of an expert on judges. What you need in a judge is counting with the index finger of one hand on the fingers of the other. Firstly, integrity. Secondly, courage. Thirdly, common sense. And fourthly, he must know a little law." Winthrop's integrity, courage, and common sense were beyond all question. It could hardly have been otherwise. He came of a long line of sturdy and distinguished men, the first of whom had come over in the Mayflower days to the Massachusetts coast, and he did know a little law, but the manner of the deployment is none the less illustrative of how much quicker Governor Taft could make and publish a law than any of his fellow despots. 428, over on the mainland of Asia, considering how slow-moving all their blue scrub was compared with Furchi and his corps of stenographers. Having now given, I hope, a more or less sympathetic insight into what absolute rulers and governments of the Philippines have been, in the very nature of the case, from the beginning, let us observe that change of tone of the government after the reign of the first ended and the reign of the second began. Chapter XVIII. Governor Wright, 1904. The blame of those you better, the hate of those you don't. Kipling's White Man's Burden. Governor Taft left the Philippines on or about December 23, 1903, to become Secretary of War in President Roosevelt's cabinet, and shortly afterwards as Governor Wright succeeded to the governorship. After the accession of Governor Wright, there was no more hammering into the American businessmen having money invested in the island that the Filipino was their little brown brother, for whom no sacrifice, however sublime, would be more than was expected. Governor Wright was quite unpopular with the Filipinos and immensely popular with the Americans and Europeans, because, soon after he came into power, he let the cat out of the bag by letting the Filipinos know plainly that they might just as well shut up talking about independence for the present, so far he was about to man. In other words, that Governor Taft's Philippines for the Filipinos need not cause any specially brilliant because he has no reference to any Filipinos now able to sign, but only to unborn Filipinos who might sign in some remote future generation. And that the Philippines had caused them all to want to sob simultaneously for joy on the broad chest, as Governor Taft was merely the face of an amiable unwillingness to tell them an unpleasant truth, this that in his opinion they were wholly unfit for self-government, all of which, in effect, meant that Governor Taft had been merely keeping the word of promises, the year and breaking it to the point. The Red Plain cult made the Filipinos one and all feel alacrity. Our true friend was departed, but as Secretary of War, Taft, after 4 years more of trying to please both sides, at home, at last frankly told the Filipinos when he went out to attend the opening of the first Philippine legislature in 1907, practically just what Governor Wright had begun to tell them from the moment his predecessor had exchanged the parting tear with them on the waterfront at Manila. In 1903, the net result of the Wright policy of uncompromising honesty on the present political situation may easily be guessed. Governor Wright's method of repudiating the Taft straddle took for its Keynote: in lieu of the Philippines for the Filipinos, the slogan, an equal chance for all. What Governor White meant was merely that there would be no more browbeating of Americans to make them love their little brown brother as much as Governor Taft was supposed to love him, but that everybody would be treated absolutely alike, and nobody coddled. However, the Filipinos of course knew that they could not compete with American wealth and energy, and so did the Americans in the islands. So what the right slogan? Unquestionably, theirs was its intent, in extra that everybody considered dignified, straightforward and candid. Was, in effect, the British white man's burden or trust for civilization theory, a theory where the white man who wants someone else's land goes and takes it on the idea that he can put it to bed, misspend the owner, that earned the original John M.R. Taft had given them become transparent with little brown brother. Thus, early did it become clear to the Filipinos that behind the mask of executive protestations that they shall someday have independence, when fit for it, less with the determination and since early thought that independence numbered generations yet to come. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. This book has been written, up to this point, in vain, if the preceding chapters have not made clear how much political expediency, looking to the welfare of a party in power naturally seeking to continue in power, necessarily dominates Philippine affairs under American rule. We have a place under the microscope of history, made available by the official documents now accessible, the long battle between the political expediency during the independence, which began in General Anderson's dealings with Aguinaldo and continued through General Merritt's and General Otis's regime.
She's calling. Let me go investigationalize things. See what's going on. Man, I thought I ended the stream. Sorry. What's up? Yeah, buddy. I love that.
Regimes. We have seen General MacArthur's attempt at a wise surgical operation to excise the independence thought from the Philippine body politic, so that the expediency germ might die a natural death from having nothing to feed on. We have seen that operation interfered with by the Taft Commission during the presidential campaign of 1900, because the men in control of the Republic could not ignore considerations of political expediency. And we saw the consequent premature setting up of the civil government in 1901, with all its dire consequences in the then as yet unconquered parts of the archipelago, southern Luzon, and some of the Islands. We have observed the effective though heroic local treatment administered to the Philippine body politic by General Bell in Batangas in 1901 February, with a view of killing off the independents. But there, we have seen the fierce struggle between some of the clans, related to and the expediency germs now Northern Golden Forces, in Albay and the off-year 1903, we are now to take our 5th year's course in the Colonial Department of Political Ethnological Research, the presidential year 1904. It was the way the Samar insurrection of May 6, 1904 was handled which finally convinced me that the Filipinos would not kill any more of each other in 100 years than we have killed, or permitted to be killed, of them, in the fell process of benevolent assimilation. American imperialism is not honest, like the British variety. American imperialism knows that orders of its order, and values, mother, one that it takes after its father more than it does after its mother. British imperialism frankly aims mostly to make the survivors of its policies happy, not the people it immediately operates on. American imperialism pretends to be ministering to the happiness of the living, and, though it realizes that it is not a success in that line, it resents identification with its British cousin, by sanctimonious reference to the alleged net good it is doing it in its moments of frankness. It says, with an air of infinite patience under base ingratitude, well, they will be happy in some other generation, and that therefore the number of people we have, had or may have, to kill, or permit to be killed, in the process of benevolent assimilation, is wholly negligible. This is simply the old argument that the end justifies the means, the argument that has wrought more misery in the world than any other since time began. When Judge Taft, General Wright, and their colleagues of the Taft Commission came out to the Philippines in 1900, they came full of the McKinley convictions about a people whom neither they or M.R. McKinley had ever seen, bound hand and foot by political necessity to square the freeing of Cuba with the subjugation of the Philippines. A perfectly natural evolution of this attitude resulted in the position they at once took on arriving in the islands, viz. that to do for the Filipinos what we have done for the Cubans would mean a bloody welter of anarchy and chaos, and the presidential contest of 1900 was fought and won largely on that issue. After 1900, for all the gentlemen above referred to, the proposition was always res adjudicata. All protests by Filipinos to the contrary caused only resentment, and ultimately, authorities no more dramatically expressed the original proposition, loyalty to the original considered decision, became impregnated, in their case, with a fervor not entirely unlike religious fanaticism, and belief in it became a matter of principle, justifying all they had done, and guiding all they might thereafter do, so that when General Wright came to the throne in our colonial empire, as governor and legatee of the McKinley-Taft benevolent assimilation policies, his attitude in all he did was thoroughly honest, and also thoroughly British. He honestly believed in the bloody welter of anarchy and chaos proposition, and was prepared, in any emergency that might arise, to follow his convictions in that regard whithersoever they might lead, without variableness or shadow of turning. Taken all in all, Governor Wright was about the best man occupying exalted station I ever knew personally, President Taft, himself not excepted. Although I still adhere to Colonel Roosevelt's opinion of 1901 concerning Edmar Taft, quoted in the chapter preceding this, from the Outlook of September 21, 1901, notwithstanding that in the contest for the Republican nomination for the presidency in 1912, the Colonel recalled that opinion, seriously, a man may combine the qualities which would make a first-class President of the United States with the qualities which would make a first-class Chief Justice of the United States and still cut a sorry figure trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Or a scheme of government, the breadth of whose life is public opinion, into the running of a neo-colonial government, the breadth of whose life is exemption from being interfered with by public opinion. After the Elbe insurrection of 1903 had been cleaned up, I took charge of the 12th Judicial District, having been appointed thereto by Governor Taft just before he left the islands to become Secretary of War. In those trying pioneer days they always seemed to give me the insurrections to sit out, and it was pretty fortuitous. Whenever you ceased to be busy, prompt arrangements were made for you to get busy again. Judge Ide, the Minister of Justice, wasted no government money. The 12th district consisted of the two island provinces of Samar and Leyte, two of the 6 Bisayne Islands heretofore noticed as the only ones worth considering in a general view of the archipelago, such as the student of world politics once sworn in, to make a population of 388,922,429, and an area of 3,018 miles, 430. Samar's population was 266,237, and its area, 50 to 76 square miles, makes it the third largest island of the Philippine archipelago. The judge of the 12th district, consisting of 2 provinces, the governor of each of which was ex officio sheriff of the court in his province. I was, in a sense, the sort of shepherd of a political flock of some 650,000 people, whom I always gathered as a whole as my people. Samar and Leyte are separated, where nearest together, by most picturesque winding straight borders of Philippine narrowest point, and almost as beautiful. In fact, at its narrowest point it seems little more than a stone's throw in width. It is as pretty as the prettiest part of the Golden Horn. Leyte had been put under the civil government in 1901, and this premature interference with the military authorities in much separate efforts to pacify the island had the usual result of postponing pacification by filling local politicians wholly unable to comprehend a government which entreated or reasoned with people to do things with the notion that we were resorting to diplomacy and knew of course because of fear of it. Leyte and Samar was strategically known for the insurgents, an earlier chapter, were, because they could flee by night from one province to another in small boats without detection, when hard pressed by the Americano, the main insurgent general in Samar, Lupin, had surrendered to General Grant in 1902, but the chief of government stayed out much longer, preying upon those who did their daily toil, to always being and cutting as a means of livelihood, and continuing the political unrest in gradually diminishing degree, through 1903, by the spring of 1904. However, there still remained within the the jetsam and flotsam of the insurrection, professional outlaws, to get up some trouble, so that, as brigand chief, he might resume the roles of Robin Hood, Jesse James, et al., during the first half of that year. The opportunity these worthies had been waiting for, while resting on their oars, developed the crop of municipal officials resulting from the original McKinley plan of beginning the work of reconstruction during, instead of after, the war, and among the potential village Hamptons, instead of among the Cromwells, had resulted in some very rascally municipal officials who oppressed the poor, getting the hemp of the small farmer when they would bring it to town at their own prices, hemp being to Samar what cotton is to the south. From the lowland and upland farmers the ever-widening discontent spread to the hills, where dwell the type of people constituting only a small fraction of the total population of the islands, half savage and half child, but loving their hills, and wholly indisposed, of their own initiative, to start trouble, unless manipulated, obviously. Then, the public mind of Samar, those who know Samar will smile, with me at the phrase, but it will do, for lack of a better, once, likely soon to be in a generally inflammable condition, by July 1904, the Robin Hoods, Jesse Jameses, et al. Touched the match to the material and a political conflagration started, apparently. As unguided, save by the winds of impulse, and certainly as persistent as a forest fire, every native of the Philippine Islands, whether he be of the 7 million Christians or of the 500,000 non-Christians, is born with a highly developed social instinct either to command or to obey. The latter tendency is quite as common in the Philippines as the former is in the United States. Hence the disturbance of the conflict of 1904, the later confederations by various roving bands of outlaws yielding allegiance only to their immediate chief, soon took on a very formidable military and political aspect. 431. The roving bands would ask easily, when fine people or tribes are supposed to be protecting, are you for us or for the Americans? Promptly chopping their hands off the say, showed any lack of feeling about American municipal institutions and things American in general, pursuant to M.R. McKinley's original scheme, concocted for a people he had never seen, under pressure of political necessity, to rig up in short order a government essentially popular in form. A lot of most pitiable municipal governments had been let loose on the people, a part of our series of kindergarten lessons. The plan was as wise as it will be for the Japanese. Someone please hold Captain Hobson while I finish the analogy. When they conquer the United States, to go to the Bowery and the Gate, remains of all our seas. Thus by our pluperfect benevolence, we have contrived by 1904 to rouse the Highland folk, or hill people, whom the Spaniards had always let alone, against the Pacific, agricultural lowland people and the dwellers in the coast villages, not, rather, for such a menace did not only hope for protection, we committed to be moving to the bushes of Concord, from August to November 1904, as even after more fully set forth, before ordering, of the Army to protect from non-Washington's with Anthony, disturbance was more serious and widespread than actually existed, and, like therefore of the presidential election in the United States, I renew a delusion that the administration had never been frank with the American people concerning conditions in the Philippines. The annual report of the Philippine Commission for 1904 stated November 1st, which was just a week before the presidential election day of that year. Their annual report for 1905 stated November 1st, 1905. In their report for 1904, the Commission deal with the general state of public order in the same rosy manner which, as we have seen, had made its first appearance during the political exigencies of 1900 in the language about the great majority of the people being entirely willing to benevolent alien domination in lieu of independence. When Rip Van Winkle was trying to quit drinking, raised the state had to leave straight. Oh, we'll just have that the report for 1904. The Commission swallowed the conditions in Samar with equal nonchalance, after stating that some impliedly negligible disturbances had occurred in Samar 2 months in. The constabulary of the province took the field against the bands of Pelagians, or outlaws, and that as a result, they were soon broken up, and are being pursued and killed or captured. P. 3. In their report dated November 1st, 1905, by way of preface to an account of the extensive military operations inaugurated in Samar shortly after the presidential election of 1904, which operations had not only been in progress for nearly a year on the date of the 1905 report, but continued for more than a year thereafter. The Commission explained their 1904 nonchalance about Samar thus: it was then believed that the constabulary forces had succeeded in checking the further progress of the outbreak. P. 47. Let us examine the facts on which they based this statement, since it meant that...
Alright, I got some issues. We'll get it together.